G'day guys, this is Jackson Malal, the Wealth Mentor, and we're here for another expert masterclass with a good friend of mine, Steve Jensen from Impact Training Corporation and the National Sales Academy. So Steve's an expert in all things sales, and we've been working very closely with him in our business and with many of our clients to help them understand how they can leverage the right sales tools to help them lead with value and navigate the times, particularly when things are really challenging. So today we're going to be having a bit of a conversation with Steve around what he's seen in the current space with everything that's going on at the moment. I'm sharing some golden nuggets with you guys to help you pivot and get the right sales strategy that allows you to still achieve your goals, even when there's economic uncertainty, and hopefully help you continue to push onwards and upwards, even in the face of adversity. So Steve, thanks for joining us, mate. How you doing?
Oh, it's terrific, Jackson. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to having a chat.
Yeah, it's been a little while, mate. We've both been very, very busy trying to serve our communities. So,
Absolutely.
Steve, tell us...
Look, I must say your party the other day was absolutely terrific. I mean, that was just fabulous. It made my actual week, so thank you.
Mate, we've got a little Barry White in there, which is fantastic. I was very happy about that. So, Steve, tell us a little about you and your business.
Look, I'm the CEO of Impact Training Corporation and the National Sales Academy. They're two separate entities, so to speak, but we do the same thing. The Academy is more of like a school type scenario where we used to run programs which were just like a mastery, and also Impact Training was all done for you, where we go into businesses, tailor everything, and make sure everyone maximizes their sales. But the most important thing is gives them freedom, and that's a big rock. It gives them freedom to make lifestyle choices, because we have a bit of a saying, there's not much in business more sales won't fix. So we're going close to over nearly, 25 plus years now. So went global many years ago, and now we have come back about 2.5 years ago. We digitized, and now we've got the Sales Authority Club, where we help a small to medium-sized business and individuals get their sales rocking and rolling. And we also still do our in-house training, but given that everything's gone digital these days, we can help more people through the SAC, we call it, the Sales Authority Club. So that's a little bit of background.
Fantastic, mate. Look, we've been closely involved with the SAC for quite a while now, and it's been phenomenal. And it's really been the first thing that I've seen of its kind, which we'll dive into a little bit further as we kind of push on, Steve. So talk to us about, how did you land in sales? What was the story?
Oh, look, no one pops out of mum saying, gee, I was going to be a salesperson. Like, what are you going to do when you grow up? And look, it evolved. I was quite fortunate. I was born in Hong Kong, and we went back to England, and we became a 10-pound pom, and I popped over here at about 11 years of age. The transition from Hong Kong to Australia was quite difficult, very different culture back in those days. It wasn't as multicultural as it is now. And I was a pommy chink, so to speak. And I got very heavily involved in sports. And I really loved sports and exercise back in my younger days. And then when I went to uni, I didn't want to do what I was doing at uni. And then I came out, and I eventually got involved in computers. From there, I dovetailed into finance, and went into the banking institutions. And again, it wasn't my cup of tea. I was good at it, but it didn't make me happy. And I was very fortunate to be effective in a number of different sports. And I had some representative honors, which was a lot of fun. And then I decided I needed a place to train, and started a little gym, the first actual gym in Australia, and worked with a guy called David Simmons. That grew quite significantly, and I went back to learning and went into psychology, and then into a model called neural order, which is the granddaddy of NLP, and put a process together which made it really easy to have a conversation with someone that had an outcome. So I'm a big person on process. So did the books readings, and then I went out into the world to try to find the best of the best. And in those days, they're easy to get hold of. And it eventuated that we had a very large company. I then sold it, and then started Impact Training, because what we had was very unique. We combined 3 soft skills, which are the secret sauce for any type of good sales methodology. But we put a process together that dovetailed with that, which means it's easy to get an outcome if you have a process. Trust the process, and you'll get the outcome. However, unless you actually combine it with the soft skills, it doesn't work. So we put the hard skills together first. You set the foundations right, and then you look at the delivery. And we had significant results. We went global after about 2.5 years, and we're running in over 20 plus countries. And it's been a great journey. So, and then about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I launched the digitization of ITC and the NSA, and we I've now have the Sales Authority Club, so I can actually don't have to travel over to Norway and London. I can actually do it from our offices. So that's a little bit of a background on how I got involved, because it was necessary. You can't have a business unless you make a sale. You could have the best product in the world, but if you're not actually having someone buy from you, and I've got this little thing, I can't teach someone how to sell. I can teach them how to engage somebody so that people feel comfortable enough to buy. And even back in the old days, teaching someone to sell was not my ethos. It was actually having a conversation which was engaging enough that created an opportunity for the person to say, I want that, thank you, after they give you the money. So that's one of the reasons that after I sold the business, I said, well, other businesses needed a process. And I just started with some friends to start off with. But we had significant results because it was process driven, and then we did it regularly. We don't do training once off. It doesn't work. It's a waste of money. And that's how I got into sales, because it was an entrepreneurial process that had a process that needed to have an outcome, which was revenue and profit, having EBITDA, which people don't talk about very much. But
no, they don't, mate. Look, mate, you've definitely been a pioneer in this space. Like, I remember the first workshop that I went to of yours. Look, I've been involved in sales for a very long time, and I was lucky enough that my old man always instilled values into me of saying, hey, look, if you want to be successful in any career, you need to learn sales skills. It doesn't necessarily mean if you're not a salesperson, you still need to be able to know how to sell, be able to have a compelling conversation that inspires people to take action. But it wasn't until I actually went to one of your workshops that the penny finally dropped, and some of the tools that you use and the kind of the package of these soft skills that you present was a light bulb moment for me. So Steve, prior to you developing this framework, utilizing these kind of behavioral principles, like the kind of godfather of NLP, what was sales like before then?
Oh, look, I love that sort of type of question, because some people don't know what it was like. It was all about, get in there, and it was all focused on the close. Now you had to have an offer, and everyone drove hard on their offer. And what happened was, and it still happens now, mate, people say, oh, what do you do? I do this, or how can you help me? And then they go straight into their explanation or demonstration, which is incredibly red brain, where no decisions are made. They go through into a price presentation where there's no compelling argument. And then they have to then go hard on the close. The close was 70% of the sale back in the olden days. And it was, if you have a strong offer, you smash them with a strong offer and you close them hard. That was the ethos. And then that's where people say, oh, gee, selling is a dirty word, and getting people to buy things that they didn't even want because of pressure. And then you had to learn 101 gambits to overcome objections. Bang, 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 bang. Now we still have to learn how to overcome objections, but the whole emphasis has shifted now. It's almost in reverse. And there's been quite an interesting cyclic change over the last, say, 18 months. Back in the olden days, it was like there was limited rapport. They didn't talk about soft skills. Have a product, smash them with an offer, close, follow up like a demon, and then you'll get your sale.
It sounds hard work.
That doesn't work anymore. But funnily enough, Jackson, I'll be up front. When I go to a lot of businesses, they don't have a process, number one. Number two, they have no training whatsoever. Zero. They don't have any training or any type of sharpening of the axe. And thirdly, there's no practice on what they're doing. Now, I don't know any sporting person or anyone of any type of success that doesn't practice their craft. And sales professionals are so essential, or anyone in a business that makes sales is so essential. And if they don't practice, they're a blunt instrument. And there's been let's say, a change of the guard the sales process started changing quite dramatically, and we set a lot of trends globally, not just in one genre, right across the board, into making sure that we did a reverse cycle. So I'll explain that to everyone a little bit later, but it has changed significantly from back in the olden days, mate.
And it's crazy that the old way is just a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hustle, and your methodology is just so simple because it just makes sense. But you have to learn it because you can't just bluff your way through it. And there's so many business owners that bluff their way through their sales. If you ask them, do you have a sales process? Well, yeah, I do. Well, what is it? Well, and they can't articulate themselves.
One of the big rocks, Jackson, you'll find is that a lot of people don't have KPIs. Now, I know this is a little bit analytical, but I know it's right down your track. When I find out that one of the big rocks is, I ask them what their budget is, and not their fiscal budget, but what their sales budgets are. And then I'll say, well, what do you want your salespeople to achieve? And they'll give me a number. And I said, well, how do you measure this on a daily and weekly basis? And they say, well, we ask them how many sales they made. I said, well, hang on a tick. If you're not measuring the activities, in other words, the things you're doing, like calls to contact, a contact to booked appointments, a booked appointments to show percentage, a show percentage to next step percentage, or whatever it may be. If you're not measuring those small KPIs, you can't drive a salesperson, or you can't drive yourself. And interesting, you know this, and I'm sure your listeners do too, but I will say it. The Hawthorne principle of management will say that if you measure your data, simple KPIs on a daily basis, you will increase your sales with no skills modification at all.
Yeah.
But guess what?
No one does.
People has them. I ask them what their close rate. They tell me 80%. And anyone that gives me a percentage with a zero at the end of it, I know they're making it up. So that's just a very simple thing. And you're right. They don't have a process. What's your needs analysis like? What's your questioning skills like? Do you ask questions, or are you a teller? Do you get permission to go to your explanation demonstration? You test the temperature before you get there. Do they know, like, and trust you? And have you created any cred before you present price? The answer is no. You know what? It's not because they don't want to do it. They just don't know what they don't know. And that's
the scary part.
That's the bit. But where do you go to learn sales?
Well, they go to you, mate. And look, and you're right, mate. I remember my first role in the finance industry where they put us through a 2-week sales academy. And it was so old school. And it was that very much the pressure tactics. And it just never sat well with me. And you very much have to try and dilute your values to try and hold yourself like that in long term. And it just didn't work. And I think a lot of people have probably that horror story of learning those kind of predatory or hard sell tactics. And that's why they associate sales as a dirty word. So let's talk about the soft skills, because I think that's something that a lot of people overlook. You mentioned that you have a bundle of the 3 key soft skills. So what are they, Steve?
Look, one of the soft skills that I think is absolutely essential, and by the way, for all your listeners, soft skills, everyone enjoys soft skills because they are a fantastic skill that you can use with mum, dad, sister, brother, husbands, wives, and your spouse and your kids, because it's a communication model. There's one about communication, and there's another one about making sure there's a relationship. However, there are 3 different ways that you can do this. The delivery of your message is equally as important once you have a process. Now, there's one model that we use, and we actually do trainers with it as well. It's actually the behavior analysis. There are 4 different behaviors, and I'm sure many of your listeners would know that there's a D, I, S, and C. But interestingly enough, some people go to a workshop or a lecture on DISC and they say, oh, gee whiz, they walk out and say, I'm a D, I'm an I, or whatever. And that means absolutely nothing, but they don't know how to utilize it. The utilization and behavior analysis is really simple. It's actually understanding to modify your language and your delivery. For instance, if you've got someone direct and strong and says, I don't want to buy today, you just take it away from them. You say, that's fine, I won't let you buy today. They'll say, I will if I want to. So it's a foregone conclusion on how they would operate, but it's a combination of 2 different styles, primary and secondary. The combination of these changes the behavior, and it's a predictable behavior. If you learn how to do that, You can modify your behavior to suit your prospect. Remember, like attracts like. This is on the phone, this is on Zoom, this is belly to belly, whatever you want to do. It's actually one of the skills you can learn first. The other next skill is trigger pointing. Is when you actually have to, in your processes, you actually need to have questions that will trigger a question in the other person, so you can ask questions about their answers. This is called triggering. The one big problem is that people don't understand some of the things they say to people trigger a negative response. Sometimes you want to have a negative response because you say, well, do you want to have that for much longer? They say no. Well, that's a positive response in a negative pre-frame. And then you actually have to make sure that those triggers has an outcome. So if you learn those, and there's a number of patterns you can learn in those, which are quite easy to replicate. And when you get into the practice, drill, rehearse, it becomes part of your conversation. And then if we then go into the last one, which is a lot of people talk about NLP or neural order or whatever you want to do. And that's a gambit of many different communication skills. It's not about behavior, it's about communication. And that's where you actually have to understand, you know, everyone loves talking about body language and all that sort of stuff. What happens when people do this, take their glasses off? What happens if they're touching their, and there are let's say pre-composed ideas where you can actually read someone's body language. Now that's just a very small part of NLP. The other things are like pre-framing and reframing. Reframing is getting someone to think differently. You can't tell someone to think differently. You got to ask them a question. Here's an example. You tell somebody something that's really important. Well, people say this, Jackson, this is really important, blah, 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 blah. And that's supposed to convince you. Well, let me tell you right now, that is almost a pushback. You'll actually disenfranchise somebody by saying, this is really important. How funny is that? What you need to do is you need to teach them something that they don't know, which will fix a problem. So I want you people to write this down. So let's find their compelling reason. Let's say their pain factor, their worry. Once you find that out, you then teach them something that they don't know, that they go, wow. What we want to do then, you just say, wow, and that will fix your problem. So pain, worry, an activity, fix the problem. You then just say, do you think it's important here? Not this is really important. Do you think it's important to have that process, product, and or service to fix that type of outcome that you're trying to avoid? What are they going to say? It's a loaded question. They'll say, absolutely. I say, I totally agree with you. I'd just like to be the devil's advocate. What would happen if you didn't have that product or service? What would happen? They'll say, oh, it'll be disastrous, ABC. I told you, I take it you don't want that to happen. No. So all of a sudden, they've told you why it's important. See, that's called a trigger. I want them to tell me it's important. If you tell them it's important, remember this little saying, if you say it, they doubt it. If they say it, it's true. That's called triggers. And then at the end of it, say, well, look, don't worry. That makes them worry. We're experts at doing it. And by the way, Jackson, we are the first, or we are the only company that has the 1, 2, 3 process. How good is that? And don't say, how does that sound? That's called a negative trigger. How good is that? That pre-emphasizes a solution for a negative. That's called triggering. And then there's other things that you do in NLP, which are quite simple. We don't teach NLP. We teach how to actually utilize those triggers that make it easy for people to buy. And there's lots of things when you do your presentation that you can do that make it much easier for people to buy, so you don't have to close. So there are some ideas of some of the soft skills that you can utilize.
And this is phenomenal, mate. And I guess for people listening to this, and I know firsthand that many people, when they first start hearing about all these different things, like, how am I ever going to be able to conduct this in a client meeting? How long is this meeting going to go for? 5 hours? But it's actually much simpler than what it appears. So, Steve, in your experience, how long does it take somebody to be able to adopt, apply, and get the results as a result of using these skills?
Look, the question is a very apt one. To change a mindset is something that you can't tell somebody to do something, number one. They've got to want to have a desire to learn. Now, when people have actually been doing something for a period of time, that creates a thing called a pattern. There is a neural pathway that's been created, and you need to make sure that you break the pattern. Now, does that take long to do? No, it doesn't. But what we have to do is we can then show you a big picture process, or we'll give you some ideas. But what you need to do is to learn the nuance properly. And the way that we do that is that we start learning things that are going to give you high ROI. See, the great thing about communications, relationships, sales, training, it has a direct response to ROI. If you're getting people to buy from you more regularly, the ROI is quite significant. 5% higher show rate, 5% close rate. I mean, you're a whiz with numbers. If you just do the perpetual numbers of that on a regular basis, the return is quite significant. Yeah. So the way we actually train people is actually to get them to do the repetition. So that's why when we go into businesses, we do a lot of practice, drill, rehearse. We call it PDR. It's the old role play, but people say, I don't like role play. So we practice it, but we have fun. When we're laughing, we're learning. So we have things that become interesting to do, but we need the repetition. Repetition's the mother of learning, mate. And one coat of paint, and as I said at the beginning, doesn't work. So the way we do this is say, right, let's learn the hard skills first. Let's get the process in place. And that's easy to learn with repetition. And then we then that's why we come together in either webinar, which we'll have to do because of the situation, but normally in an event which you've attended, we then go and do the practice, drill, rehearse, belly to belly, and have some fun and laugh. And guess what? You leave with an experience. So if you create an experience in training, and it becomes an ethos that you can use not just in selling, but in talking to human beings, people learn much, much faster. So, but it has to be enjoyable. And that's why we do things every week in the SAC. And that's why I chat with everyone every day, because and accountability is the thing. What are you doing with it? So you're right. It can be overwhelming, but it's better to chunk things, get that right, and move on.
100%. So let's talk about current situation and call out the elephant in the room a little bit. There's obviously a lot of businesses that are out there that are in a lot of pain. And I think a lot of the feedback that I've seen is that many businesses or business owners or sales professionals have adopted the belief that in this current situation, people don't want to buy. What's your view on that?
Okay. This is a mindset of failure. When someone goes into a failure mindset, they're almost giving up. You know, the reason that they're saying that people don't want to buy is because they don't know how to get them to buy. If you have a product or service that is a compelling service that they need, all you need to do is and there's a very click word at the moment, it's called pivot. Now, if the product or service you had 3 to 4 weeks ago isn't what they're needing, then you've got to make sure that you get the modification to that product and or service. In other words, what is your delivery of your service going to be now that the climate has changed? If you have something that they need, you need to make the modifications for it. What they might have needed 3 weeks ago, well, that might have changed, or your avatar might have changed. You've got to have the ability to sit down and say, where do we need to pivot? Because we do have a product or service that people need, but do we need to make sure it's packaged differently? So that's still the delivery side of things. If that's been sorted out, and you then say, well, do we have prospects that need the product or service? We've now got to get them to see that we have changed. Now, it's not that we've changed, that we do things differently. Be different. Go to market and say, we can fix the problem. We do it differently. Don't do marketing with red brain stuff like feature, feature, feature. Go to market with something that you're going to help people, which is topical. So you've got to pivot on that delivery. That's number one. And number two is once we get the person and we've got the delivery sorted out, you're not marketing yet. You've got the delivery sorted out. How are you going to pivot? How are you going to package? Now you then got to have your sales process in place. So you can actually deliver a presentation, whether it's online or whether it's in any other way, which is going to get a compelling argument to get them to buy. So to think about, oh, they don't want to buy my stuff. A friend of mine has a coffee shop, okay? Cafe. They've been shut. He went, my God, what am I going to do? He said, well, we're allowed to do the takeaway thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to get takeaway this, we're going to take away that. We're going to put some nutritious meals together. They went to all of their people in the area before they got told they got to close and say, that's what we're going to do. Would you like to be a VIP member? In the first week, it's going to be free delivery. And guess what? He hasn't not making as much money, but his coffee sales have gone through the roof. He's now selling nutritious food, and he then went to another business that packaged it and then just got them on track. He got some of his waiters and waitresses were happy to do the deliveries for them. So he's pivoted. He's only had a reduction of around about, I think he said just the other day, about 20% of revenues.
Yeah.
He's pivoted his delivery. So it's really important that people actually reach out for help here, mate, because we can't do it alone. If you need to have, let's say, some advice, get out there and ask for help. Don't sit on your hands, because there's always a way. Someone's will find a way. So it's not sitting on your hands. It's not a time for ego. It's a time to say, what are you doing? And that delivery process is paramount. Then it's the sales process. How you deliver your explanation demonstration after qualification to get someone to buy. And that has changed quite remarkably. Yeah,
and I think that it ultimately depends on business to business. But I think the other question that many people are having is, well, can I use the same sales strategy if I'm selling online, if I'm selling via Zoom, compared to if I was doing belly to belly before? So what do you feel that maybe some of the shifts that people can make to make sure that they're still successful using a digital sales method?
Okay. Look, this is something that we actually started over a year ago. So who would have known Corona would have come along on board?
Good timing, hey?
All of a sudden, something changed. But we've been going through the process. And because I went 4 years ago, I went back into school to get onto digitization. I was quite barren in that area. But if I can learn it, anyone can. The sales process has changed. Let me give you an example. We get a phone call now. Ring, ring. Hello. You go through the process. Now, normally you might say, I'm going to come to see you, or you're going to come and see me. Okay. So it's not a retail sale I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Now, let's just say that's what you now need to have in your prompt is to say, oh, terrific. Well, we can do A, we can do D. We can actually show you on Zoom. It'll be really simple. And you talk about your delivery on the phone. Now, that's a small shift on the telephone. But we want to get belly to belly to them, because that's what you do in your business. So you still have a telephone call, but you've got to change the prompt, and you've got to practice that. Now, let's say in the olden days, they had to then get in a car, come to see you. Well, guess what? They can actually go on Zoom almost immediately. Oh, look, is it important for you, Jackson? Well, look, you got 20 minutes now? Yeah, you got near the computer? Well, I'm stuck at home, mate. See how the short the sales cycle? So now you've got to be ready. So your computer now needs to be ready. You need to be out of your pajamas and making sure that you're ready to go. So it's about prep. Now, let's say we got on the phone. Let's say you book an appointment for tomorrow. Maybe it's immediate. So now you've got to have, my qualification tools ready. Now, there are 2 ways you can do that. Number one, you can send them a pre-qual, 90-second little form to fill in before they turn up on Zoom, which is usually a good idea. You can email me. It's a free application you can get, just qualification questions. Or you can just use your qualification needs analysis when you get on Zoom. Now, there are some things on Zoom that you've got to learn how to do. For instance, let me just show you what most people do. They look at the screen because we've been taught to look at someone in the eyes when we speak to them. So I'm looking at Jackson right now, right in his eyes. But guess what? I look cross-eyed and look at 3 bourbons. So what you've got to learn is you've got to look at the eyes, which is the camera. Look straight in that camera and watch Jackson in the peripheral. Small thing, big difference. I've got lights here, here, and here in front of me, nothing behind me. So you can see my tone. Now,
good there, Steve.
Well, the back lights in the back. You've got to get this stuff ready. Now, once you've actually done this, you then have the person online. Now, how do you create rapport online? The same way we did before. But guys, if you're not looking the person in the eye, guess what? You don't have eyeball to eyeball. You just have someone looking at a screen. Breaks rapport. Isn't that interesting? Just look at this camera and you got a difference. Now, that's just some of the little skills we did on 101 called the applications and how to use them. Now, other things you can do, but then you get into qualification, 80% of the sale. Now, if I'm just got a talking head here chatting Jackson, that ain't going to work. I've got to now be able to go onto my screen, share my screen, show him some visuals and go on and off screen. So having the ability to go onto a PowerPoint with having your little head in the corner then taking it off and coming back onto screen is a skill that you've got to master. It's called on and off screen. In other words, show the PowerPoint and then click it, unshare, come back on, talk to Jackson. Now remember, what they see in front of them, they look at. So as soon as you come off screen, they'll be looking at you straight into the camera again. That's a small skill set, makes a massive difference. Wow. You can still ask your discovery questions. We use the 4 W's plus H. It's a conversation. And then have your cheat sheets. Have them next to you. Tell them I'm going to read some things to you. Read and go down and again look back to the camera. Simple thing. Then you go to your explanation demonstration, your product and or service. You then got to have the thing called milestoning now online. Milestoning is showing them what the processes are, so there's nothing to worry about. So it's simplified. That's a skill. Then you need to tailor that milestone accordingly. Pre-qual. Get rid of any objections, and then get into your price presentation. Now, this again needs to be a visual and an auditory presentation, ideally on a PowerPoint or any type of platform. Don't tell them the pricing, show them and tell them. That's a skill. And then you'll actually have different pricings accordingly, or if you don't have pricings, if you need to send them something, give them what the preliminary is, and then do a link close. Now, the mentality here on online is having a what's next mentality. It's not I'm doing a presentation, it's what's next. At the end of the presentation, you got to get ready to make sure that you present your prices, or the what's next could be a preliminary next step. You then book it in. Now, do it immediately. Back in the olden days, we used to send people links in an email. You can still do that.
Yeah.
Now you can go to chat box. Bob, go to the chat box. See the chat box in there? Okay, click the link in the chat box. Boom, share your screen. Let me talk you through. Push the button. Boom, we're booked in for next week. Or that deposit's done and dusted. Let's get cracking. Now that's called a chat box or close. Or if you don't have a chat box, you just want them to go to your website, put the URL in the chat box, send them to your website, share the screen, get them to push the button, push what's next. So that's a little bit of an overview of how things have shifted, but we've got to learn how to look at the camera. We've got to be able to go on and off screen, and there needs to be prep. Oh, by the way, in your explanation and demonstration for all your listeners, you telling them that you can fix the problem is part of it. The second part, and it's absolutely essential, you have to have a thing called proofing. Proofing is actually having a way of proving what you've said is true. My recommendation is have either a small short video of someone else that has used your product or service in the past that says you're the duck's nuts, or a couple of pictures of results that you've achieved in the past. And they say that if you can prove it twice, you'll increase your closing percentage by at least 50 to 60%. Prove it twice. Prove it. Don't just say, prove it. And that means you have to do some videos, get them edited. Don't have to be beautiful, but get some proof and don't just tell. Yeah. And that's how things have changed. There's only about 5 or 6 things that changed, but we've actually created a sales pivot on take people through that journey as quickly as possible just recently. So, and it's working well.
Hugely valuable, mate. And look, this is the reason why I love your program, because it's the first of its kind that I've ever seen. And it provides the hard skills, the soft skills, and the accountability to make sure that small businesses can get access to this big business style training. Because really, a lot of this stuff is reserved for big corporates. And you very much made it for SMEs. So, Steve, talk to us a little bit about the SAC. What's all about, what's involved, and what does it look like for anybody who might be interested?
Well, it was a project of mine because I made a conscious decision, mate, to not travel overseas anymore. As you know, I was do a lot of work in our agencies overseas, and I was, pretty much for nearly 20 years. That's what I was doing. And look, it was great. We had an army of consultants that were absolutely brilliant. But I wanted to stay back in Australia for some family reasons. I want to look after mum. And so we created the SAC, and the Sales Authority Club was something that was a project. Because I'm a purist, mate, and I know you've seen what we do, I was always saying, gee, we should gotta be belly to belly. I know the results we've got. Yeah, tripled, quadrupled incomes over 20 years. I mean, why would I change it? But it wasn't scalable. So I said, well, normally we go in-house, B2B, but how come we're not working to small to medium-sized businesses and we're not even doing the individuals and they need help? So the SAC was created, which combined the two. I wanted to be able to give them an all done for you program. So we created a program of all the new age selling skills, which they can do the hard skills with a video program, which has workbooks and a little quiz that has the accountability. And that's been working a treat. That was the first stage. Second stage was to then see everybody every week. So every week on a Monday at 7:30, firstly, we do a sales plan with everyone together on Zoom. And I record it, and if they miss it, which hopefully they don't, but it will go into our portal that they can watch it again, and even in our private Facebook group. So that's a plans. You know that over 93 to 94% of businesses do not have a sales plan, closing rates, so show rates and stuff for the whole month at all.
Crazy.
That is really scary. So that's what. So well, I know that makes a difference. So then what we then do is throughout the week, we'll then have a business tips training. And this, while COVID's on, we're having nutrition tips and also role play, fun play, and so forth, some extra stuff there as well. Now, the following Monday, we then do training. I'll do training. It might be part of the video program, but it's usually extra stuff. And then the following Monday, we do implementation. So we hold you accountable. Now, there's also more accountability, as you would know, mate. Every Monday, we do check-in. I check in with you for 15 minutes. Sometimes it goes longer to see what you've done, what your plan is, and see any tools you need. There's also an email that you need to fill in just to tell me what you've done. So you're going to get touch points. I don't believe everyone can be held, have autonomy is a good thing. I think accountability does help. And it's not stick accountability. It's to be able to do that. Now, because we're all, for many years, it's actually been in-house. I still wanted to keep that. So every quarter, we brought our tribes together. And that's just been absolutely fabulous. Keeping in close contact with everybody. I'm trying to buddy everyone up in the SAC as well. And then getting together, the camaraderie that's been great. It's been fantastic. The events are sharp and we go for a full day. They go in no time. And all the events we've had have been hugely successful and the feedback has been good. And we're going to have to do the next one as a webinar, but I'm hoping the one after that will be back to the new normal. So that's how the SAC works. And it's now our signature program. So we will be launching it over in Europe in a new year and also in Nordic.
Fantastic. Great. So what kind of business is it for, Steve? Who gets benefit from it?
Well, look, financial planners, any type of accountants, as you know, any type of business that actually has to speak to people, and it's not retail. It's not retail like it's not for McDonald's or just for a business which they would go on and click a few buttons to buy it online. It's a type of business that actually has to talk to somebody. We need to then take them through a presentation. I mean, we've got dentists, we've got health clubs, we have financial planners, we have property developers, people that need to talk to people. Some are big ticket items and some are small ticket items, but it requires telephone skills, people skills, face-to-face or even on Zoom. So if your business requires a conversation to take someone through a journey and you need to ask them to actually buy or maybe assume the sale, small to medium-sized business, or even if you're a solo warrior, an entrepreneur. We've got a few people in, let's say, a culture consultant, and she's going through and learning those processes for her business. So it's belly-to-belly stuff, telephone stuff, and having the strategies in place. So that's the type of business we work with.
Love that. Fantastic. And the thing I love most about it, mate, is it's on a subscription-based model. So it's a reasonable price point for the amount of value. I actually think you're too cheap, Steve, for the amount of value that you deliver to the to our team. So mate, I think it's fantastic.
Well, it's really kind of you. We've got it's actually we've extended that foundation membership stuff. So anyone that joins on our foundation membership its grandfather, so it will stay forever. And obviously, if any of your tribe comes along, even when the price goes up, we'll also be looking after them. So you've been a great support, Jackson, and it's been a delight working with your crew, and also and also the value you're giving to the ZAC too. You're helping all of our crew in there. It's just been outstanding. So thank you.
Mate, this is the thing, right? In these times, it's rising tides lifting all ships. We've all got to share our values. So speaking of values, Steve, what are some of the things that people can get, or where can they get in touch with you? What are some of the resources that you can put them in touch with?
Look, easy to do. I can actually just get them to pop onto our website, click on a sales growth plan. I'll go through for a full hour and do a bit of a strategy with them, whether they start or not, it's irrelevant. They can actually, I'll give you the phone number. They can call me directly while we're all in lockdown. I'm not going to be presenting any large things. And also my email address, or they could join the Sales Success Club, which is a free Facebook group, which I do some trainings on a Saturday morning. So any one of those places.
Fantastic. We'll include some links down below. Steve, it's been so much value that you've shared. There's definitely some gold nuggets. Mate, look forward to catching up again soon. So guys, hopefully you've found this valuable. This is an integral time for you to work on reviewing your sales process. Even if you are a sales veteran, it's something that you've constantly got to be working on. Don't allow yourself to perform with a blunt instrument. You need to make sure that your tools are sharp, your processes are sharp, and that you're pivoting appropriately to be successful in times of uncertainty, because then you're going to be thriving when times are good. Thanks again, Steve. Look forward to catching up again soon.
Thanks a lot, Jackson. Really appreciate it. Bye for now.
Thanks.